Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the commission. I'm Chuck Sheehan, I'm the chairman. This is the January 2nd regular meeting of the Stonington Planning and Zoning Commission. Let the record reflect that I call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. This evening, Bennett Brissett will be seated. Bennett's an alternate. He'll be seated for regular member Andy Meek, who's not here due to illness this evening. All the other regular members, I'm sorry, Lynn Conley is not here either, I apologize. And in her stead, Mary Ellen Mataleska, our other alternate who is here this evening, will be seated for Lynn. Thank you both for being here this evening. First item on the agenda after appointment of alternates is approval of minutes. First meeting up is number 1744, December 19th, 2023. What's the commission's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written and submitted for meeting number 1744 from December 19, 2023.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Seconded by Gary. Belkey, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Another set of minutes for meeting number 1745, December 20th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes for meeting number 1745 from December 20th, 2023 as written and submitted.
There's a motion to approve the meeting minutes for December 20th, 2023. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll abstain from that since I was not attending that meeting.
One abstention. All others in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I also did not attend the meeting.
Okay. The motion passes. Chair votes aye. Next item on the agenda is item 4, public comment. I understand we do have at least one individual that wants to speak tonight. Normally, public comment is for items that aren't on the agenda. Tonight, we're going to have someone speak for an item on the agenda, and that's due to the fact that this person submitted correspondence and there wasn't sufficient time to get it to the commission. So if that individual would come to the mic and identify yourself, state your name and address. Evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm Jim Moody. I live at 77 Old North Road in Mystic.
Evening.
And I appreciate the opportunity. And I spoke with the planner, and he said it's not normal to speak. So I'm not in favor or disfavor for this application. I just wanted to make sure that the commission is aware that what's in the file there. There's some comments from the engineer that talks about taking care of flooding. I just want to make sure the commission knows that right now Old North Road does get water on it. In this location, the storm drains that were added a long time ago don't go to this area. And if we put houses on top of this stuff, I'm concerned that it also ends up going into the riverside. And then secondarily, the lot isn't just empty. The site permit, which I know is only temporary, talks about pedestrian access. We park our cars there to use the docks that we paid Mr. Allen for. And we also store our small boats on trailers there. So if any of that is germane to what you're doing, just wanted you to know that's the actual situation there. Thank you.
We're very mindful of elevations, particularly as it relates to areas that are affected by, the 100-year and 500-year floods. But we very much appreciate you coming and offering your comments. So thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
And thank you for your letter. Anyone else wish to speak on anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll move to item 5, correspondence. Is there any correspondence?
None this evening.
Okay. There is some correspondence, just the point of order that was in your folders. That's not typically brought up under this item. Staff reports?
No reports either.
Okay, and the balance of the items are in our folders. There's no report from the chair this evening. Brings us to item 7, old business. First item under old business is Mason's Island Company, PZ 233-1 CAM S. Moran application on behalf of Mason's Island Company. If you'd state your name, please, sir, and who you represent.
Of course. Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year. My name is Sharyne Cerullo. I'm a professional engineer in Connecticut. I work for H&H Engineering Associates out of Mystic. I'm joined by our applicants, Rufus Allen and Roy Bollinger from Mason's Island Company, and our project land use attorney, John Chase. We're sitting here in our front row. What we are here before you with is a CAM application. It's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing, I guess, is that items number 1 and number 2 on your agenda. It's for lot 1, new lot 1, and new lot 2 of a property on Old North Road that the applicants currently own. It's Old North Road, as you see on the plan here, is to the south of the development. I'm sorry, of the property. Mason's Island Marina is to the east, and Mystic Harbor is to the north. What we're looking to do here is, what you're going to see is a conceptual lot development for each of those 2 lots. The reason it's 2 separate applications is because there's a free split application that we are going to be submitting to the town. We are not here for a lot division. We're not here for the free split. The lot is available for a free split, so the applicants are moving forward with the town. As long as each of the lots meet zoning regulations, then they're allowed to do a free split. So that process is ongoing concurrently with what we have before you. So they have not been split yet. They will be split in the future. But what we're here before you to discuss is the conceptual development of each of those lots as it applies to a CAM application.
If you could just explain for the benefit of the audience.
Sure.
That a subdivision isn't a subdivision until it's 3 lots. That the first division, in other words, the division of a piece of property that has not been subdivided since 1960, when the town adopted zoning regulations, the first cut is done by deed. Subdivision approval is not required. Subdivision approval is not triggered until the 3rd lot is created. So that's kind of what it is, just for the benefit of everybody in the audience. So we have no purview over this cut. That could be done without the approval of the commission. It can be done by anybody in town who has a piece of property that meets the zoning regulations that the property has not previously been subdivided. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. No, thank you for the clarification. So that's exactly what it is. Each of the 2 lots will meet zoning regulations that will be reviewed by town staff and then filed on land records. So what you see before you on the plan for application number 1, what we're looking at, am I allowed to talk? Can I carry this with me, or is there a microphone?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So what you see on the plan before you is the parent parcel, is the total outside border. What we're looking at, this is the new lot line that will be created by the free split to create new lot 1 and new lot 2. So what we show on this plan is strictly conceptual, which is part of where the nuance of this application comes before you. This isn't actually a site plan application, it's a coastal area management application. That was referred to DEEP, that was referred to all the town staff for review and comment for the future application of a zoning permit. So these house footprints that you see before you, they're currently designed as duplexes. However, in the future, whomever decides to develop these properties, they would be free to do either single family or duplex, and whatever that footprint may look like, and however the grading and the driveway look, however the septic system will look, that will all be submitted again in the future for a zoning permit, be reviewed by town staff and the zoning enforcement officer. What we are before you asking for is the CAM application for the conceptual development. So the dock that's currently on lot 1, the dock that's currently on the property will fall onto the lot 1 property, newly created lot 1 property. That will remain, that's the only structure on the parent parcel, and that will remain as is. The septic systems that you see here are designed for conceptual 3-bedroom duplexes, so a total of 6 bedrooms on lot 1. On lot 2, which is this next application, which we'll get to, that's also the same footprint, same building. So what you're going to hear is a lot of duplicate information in back-to-back applications, so I'm hoping I can just say same on the next application. So this was reviewed by the health department, Ledgely Health District, and approved for lot suitability. We also have plenty of reviews from all of your town staff. Most of those being favorable, which I'll get into. We received those just before the New Year break. I don't think they required a submission from us to identify any issues with that. However, I'll just go over the comments briefly with you, kind of a summary of what their comments were, and just address any of those comments that came up. So the first one was Ledgely Health District, as I mentioned, approved the lot 1 for the 6-bedroom duplex. It's a multifamily, it's held to a higher standard, and that was approved as such for the leaching system location, septic tank location, and the cross section. So all of those elevations have been approved by Ledgely. WPCA has no comments. This will be on public on-site septic systems, which is why Ledgely reviewed it. The fire district, no comments have been received as of our receipt of this information. The building official did not have any comments. The town engineer had 6 comments that I will just quickly touch on. The first is that any future plans should include a note that says where the survey came from. That's actually already on the plan. Reference map A identifies the Class A2, Class D2 boundary and topographic survey. That will be the same reference in the next plans. However, that's just his first comment. So comment number 2, future site plans to include soil erosion and sediment control measures. We have conceptual soil erosion and sediment control measures shown. Of course, when the actual site plan is fully developed, if those have to change or be modified in any way, we'll certainly do that. Item number 3, we would like an update to note number 11 on the plan. That note says that we can't allow ponding on any adjacent property. He asked us to add to that note and say no ponding on the town right away either. So that's perfectly amenable to that. Note number 4 is just a note that says compensatory storage is not required. We agree. Future site plans should include BMPs for the first, pest management practices, for the first inch of rain, which we're amenable to that as well. And number 6 was that septic systems have to be reviewed by Ledgely Health District. So as I already mentioned, they reviewed what we have shown, any future, whether it's a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom home, 3-bedroom, they'll review that actual plan with the architectural plans moving forward. 2 other comments. One was from the floodplain manager. The first comment was that any future development has to meet FEMA regulations, which we agree. The second comment was regarding sea level rise, and they would like us to consider on a future development that we potentially look for more freeboard. Right now, we're showing a certain elevation based on the current flood elevation plus 1 foot. I think we're showing 2.3 feet above the base flood and 2.5 feet. They just said, we'd like you to consider raising that. I don't think that's the purview for now. That's not what we're doing here, but we can certainly take that under advisement when the actual next developer comes in. And then the third comment from the floodplain manager was egress, which is another comment from Deep, which we'll get into in a minute, is Mason's Island Causeway, which I'm sure you guys are aware. That's one of the areas identified by the Coastal Resiliency Plan by Stonington. He just shares a concern that Mason's Island will become an egress issue during 100-year and 500-year snow events. The comments from Deep were 3 of those comments. One was the egress, as I just alluded to. The second was multifamily, considering duplexes here instead of single family. This is hopefully, we're presenting conceptual duplexes because that's the more restrictive for development. Whomever goes in next, they'll have the option to do single family or duplex. That's not really what we're looking at, I guess, today, or this commission's purview for today. And the third is sea level rise, and again, that they would like to note that no structures, seawalls or revetments will not be allowed on this property in the future. So I just wanted to point that out. So those are the 3 items by Deep. Of course, Deep is advisory, as I'm sure you've heard a million times. With that, I think John Chase will step in as our project attorney to kind of go over our legal ramifications of our application.
Thank you. Evening, Mr. Chase.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Attorney Chase.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and Happy New Year as well to all of you. My job's been made considerably easier, Mr. Chairman, by your very clear explanation of the concept of what we colloquially refer to as a free split under Section 8-25 of the general statutes. That is a division of a piece of land that's not previously been divided since the inception of the subdivision regulations can be divided into 2 lots as a matter of right. Once you reach 3 lots, of course, the need for a subdivision approval kicks in. And I only wish to speak to that with regard to a minor point in the report that was received. Just want to make sure I get to my right portion of my papers. Yeah, the report that was received on behalf of the town from SLR concerning this review. This is from Mr. Sloven at SLR. Starts out in the overview section by saying that the application is for division of an existing undeveloped parcel so as to facilitate future development. Well, of course, as I think we all quite clearly understand, this isn't an application for a division, it's an application for CAM review concerning future conceptual development of what would be the resulting 2 parcels. And again, I don't think there's any lack of clarity as to that, but I wanted to just make note of that that Mr. Sloven gets perhaps a little bit ahead of himself, and otherwise his comments, as indicated by Mr. Moran, have been taken on board and taken into consideration here. But I also wanted to point out that a somewhat similar stance is taken by Mr. Lynn, the environmental analyst at DEEP, who states in his review pursuant to the CAM Act that is on the second page that the commission should consider whether dividing the lot constitutes a significant increase in hazards to life and property, or if it only marginally does so. And of course, the CAM review process doesn't extend the jurisdiction of the commission beyond what's contained in its regulations. And since we are proposing something that pursuant to the commission's regulations and the subdivision statutes would be a matter of right to divide this property into 2, it's really not something that the commission, I don't think, under this report should pay a lot of attention to, and more instead focus on some of the other aspects that have been presented here. And one of those, to just carry the point a bit further, the deep analyst, points out that development in the conceptual proposal as 2 duplex residents, as the analyst says, could mean 4 additional families living year-round on Mason's Island. Well, of course, that is what your regulations would allow. The proposed use is allowed under your regulations, and if a developer were to pursue this course, that would be the result. Your regulations regulate that. It's not something that, pursuant to this deep analysis, you get to sort of take a further crack at that's not authorized under your regulations. And again, I don't think there's a great deal of lack of clarity as to that, but deep in these reviews, which are recommendations, not mandates, sometimes tends to, perhaps get a little bit ahead of that fact that you as a commissioner are bound by your regulations, not necessarily what DEEP would prefer or recommend. You can always in the future change your regulations, add to them to address some of these different kinds of things, but for now, we're bound by what they say at present. And finally, to that point, I just point out that your regulations in your coastal area management regulations that are found at, this is section 9.2 of your regulations. Refer at 9.2.5 to the submission of the plan that's been proposed here to DEEP pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 22A92, and also something called the Coastal Area Management Program Planning Report Number 30, which I understand is long been superseded by a different document. It's a little bit confusing for that reference to be made to Section 22A92 of the general statutes, because it's actually a different section as part of the CAM Act itself that governs the review of these plans that are submitted from agencies like yourselves. And that's actually Section 22A109, specifically Section D, which states in part that the commissioner, or in this case, an underling at DEEP who reports to the commissioner, may comment and make recommendations on such plans, and that such comments and recommendations shall be submitted to the zoning commission, within a certain time period and considered as part of your process here. Again, the statute is very clear that the DEEP review and recommendation process does not extend your jurisdiction beyond what's contained in the zoning regulations, or when you're sitting in your capacity as a planning commission, the subdivision regulations. And so that's what's been presented here, a conceptual future development plan that complies with your regulations. There have been some comments, again, through the town engineer and others that have been taken on board, as Seamus Moran pointed out and incorporated, but we're not here tonight with respect to that proposed development. It's only presented to you conceptually. What's presented to you, we believe, is a proposal that would comply with your regulations, and we respectfully request that these applications, both applications, be approved accordingly. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Just one point, I probably should have raised this during the engineer's comments. Do these have to come back to the commission, either of these lots, for site plan approval?
That will depend on the future development of the lots. If they change something, that would be remiss to what's been shown here.
Okay, so assuming these do get approved, if they change anything on here, if they change the size of the house, the position of the house, position of the septic field, location of the driveways, grading, something like that would trigger a relook at the CAM permit?
Sorry, Seamus Moran again. So I think what the intention of what we're trying to do here is to show you that a development similar to this, not specifically this, similar to this, is consistent with your coastal policies. The tidal wetlands limit, the offshore rocky, I think there's coastal embayments, shellfish concentration areas beyond the limits of our projects. We're in a flood zone, so the development of a home has to meet flood regulations plus 1 foot. So that's what we're looking to show, that we're consistent with your coastal policies, with the hope that a future site plan would be approvable by your town engineer and your zoning enforcement officer.
I don't think that's the case, though. I think if you change the map that we approve for CAM, I think you have to come back to us.
Okay.
I think the CAM permit has to be looked at again.
It would largely depend on the intensification, or if the site development, because the site, as shown conceptually, is showing both the site, erosion, sedimentation. I mean, it's outlining all of those elements. If those change in a massive capacity, then that might re-trigger a review. But what they're proposing and what they're showing is the highest and most intense use of the site.
Okay. All right, is your presentation concluded?
Unless John has anything else, yes.
I don't.
Okay, then I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
And I'm sure the commission does as well. Would you explain the grading and the frequency with which these lots will flood, just the approximate frequency? I realize the 100-year flood is at, I think, elevation 12. And if you could just explain to us what the grading is around these houses, because it looks like it's significantly lower than that.
Sure. So the flood zone line, you see, it's like an outline about a hand.
Right.
There's a flood zone 11 is on the outside here, where my hand is.
Mm-hmm.
And then elevation 12 is here, where the existing grades in those areas, for example, elevation, or flood zone elevation 12, we're looking at about contour 9, high points of 9.5, 9.3, down to low points of 8. So about 3 to 4 feet of difference between grade and flood elevation. And then on top of the 12, you have another foot to 13 for freeboard, and then whatever, if you want to be above that even slightly.
I understand that aspect of it, but how is the foundation actually built? Is it going to be on piers? Is it a standard foundation that's just elevated 5 feet out of the ground?
Pretty much. So in the
Pretty much what?
So in the A zone, it doesn't have to be on piers. It can
Yeah.
be a full foundation wall
Yeah.
with frost walls or a crawl space, depending on the flood elevation. You have to be within 12 inches of existing grade. So what that means is your slab of your crawl space is, say, elevation 8.5, where your finished floor is 13.5. It's about a 5.5 foot wall, 5.5 foot tall concrete wall. And then your frost walls have to go down 42 inches below grade. So there will be a concrete structure for your foundation. It has to have flood vents in it, and you can't have any utilities down there either. Does that answer that?
Okay, it does answer my question. It isn't like you're filling these lots to elevation 12, let's say, so that the 100-year flood doesn't even touch the foundation. These houses will be touched by floods significantly less than 100-year.
Yeah, yes, correct.
And can you give us some idea what that frequency is?
I don't know what the elevations are. They just tell us the 100-year flood elevation is the elevation that they tell us.
Because I'm led to believe this area floods relatively frequently down there. It is low.
So the frequency at which it floods, I don't know. There's grades out here, and all we know is the water surface elevation based on FEMA is the 12 and 11 and the existing grade zones out there.
Okay.
So I would have to agree that it would flood at less than 100 storm event. I just don't know how often and what storm event that would be.
Okay. Anyone else on the commission have any questions for either the attorney or the engineer?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
And when, it said the alleged light said the recommended unless there were footing drains required. Did you address
Yes.
that?
As long as there are not footing drains proposed, which without a full foundation wall, there won't be any footing drains. So I think that's superfluous in her review, but it's in there anyway. So if there were footing drains, which there's not, you'd have to be 25 feet for your leaching system to your building foundation. Where if there is not footing drains, which there won't be in this situation, it's 10 feet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There isn't any kind of a drain required for hydrostatic pressure on the footing?
No, not for what this type of foundation will be. You're not allowed a deep foundation in a flood zone.
Well, it is going to be a foundation, you said, right? With a footing?
Correct, I'm sorry, not a full basement
Not a full
foundation,
basement.
correct. So
That's
there
what
will
I'm
be-
saying. It doesn't require any relief at all for hydrostatic pressure?
No.
Okay. Any of the other commissioners have any questions of the engineer or the attorney? Staff have any reports on this?
No, I think the recommended stipulations cover all potential externalities of if things change, then they get reapproved as necessary.
Can we add a stipulation that if there's substantial variations in the site plan, that, in the actual site plans, that they would have to be reviewed by the commission?
That's number 3.
Okay.
It's as if necessitated by DEEP. And so DEEP would be the ones that would be saying whether or not it needs a new CAN application.
Okay. There's no other questions by the commission.
I have one question. It says here, this could have been a public meeting?
The
Public
commission,
hearing, you mean?
Public hearing, yeah.
the commission can choose.
Is that something we should have considered to hear from possibly more residents in Mason's Island? Is that?
Wasn't advertised in the public hearing.
It's not no, it wasn't. The commission can choose that, and the commission would make that recommendation or that choice as the application is accepted. So when this was accepted at the November 21st meeting, that would be the time the commission saying, we're accepting this application, but we will make this a public hearing and set the date for that public hearing. That would be the time to do so, not any time in between or after, because then it would be separate from the normal process.
Thank you.
So in theory, future applications, anything that would trigger section 8DB of the general H 87DB of the general statute, any site plan or CAM, the commission can choose at its pleasure, but you would have to do it at the time the application is
We
accepted.
don't traditionally have public hearings.
Traditionally, no.
Yep.
What is the commission's pleasure on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question for staff. Can we make a motion for both the applications at the same time? No, it has to be separate. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman.
They were advertised separately, so I think they have to be.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the first application with the 3 recommended stipulations. Number 1, future site plan shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. Number 2, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the final plan shall be signed by the commission and recorded. And number 3, modifications to the site development plans, if necessitated by CTD, shall be reviewed and approved by town staff and the commission as necessary.
Okay, motion is made. Is there a second?
And just to be clear, this is for the PZ 2331
Correct.
CAM.
The application that we read.
Correct.
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Move on to the next item, and it's the same applicant.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the application, CAM application with the 3 recommended stipulations. This is for application PZ 2332 CAM. The recommended stipulations are 1, future site plan shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. 2, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the final plan shall be signed by the commission and recorded. And number 3, modifications to the site development plans, if necessitated by CTD, shall be reviewed and approved by town staff and the commission as necessary. Pardon me.
Motion is made to approve PZ 232-7ZC, application by RCP Waterford 2, LLC, and Redco Stonington 3. I'm sorry, that's the wrong application. I apologize. Would you read the application number again?
Sure, it's a PZ 2332 CAM.
Yes. Thank you. Motion is made and seconded.
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the application?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Anyone abstain? Application passes. Move on to public hearings. Who's going to read, in Lynn's absence, who would read the advertisement this evening.
Thank you. Okay. I'll go ahead and do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, notice public hearing, Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of Stonington. Pursuant to the general statutes of the state of Connecticut, revision of 1958 and all amendments thereto, and pursuant to the zoning regulations for the Town of Stonington, Connecticut, the Planning and Zoning Commission hereby gives notice that it will hold a public hearing at the Stonington Board of Education District Office, 40 Field Street, Pawcatuck, on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024, at 7 p.m. on the following application. Public hearing. PZ 2328 SUP Phoenix Pawcatuck LLC, Northeast Sign Company, special use permit application for special wall signs pursuant to ZR 14.7.1 to permit a building-mounted sign totaling 37.5 square feet. Property is located at 100 Mechanic Street, Pawcatuck, M/B/L 4-7-16. Property is located in the Heritage Mill Zone.
Thank you, Ryan. Just before we begin the public hearing, if anyone desires to speak either for or against this application or just speak on the application, we have sign-up sheets over here. We ask so that we can maintain good records of who's speaking, that you sign up to speak. Doesn't mean you have to sign up to speak. If you somehow during the course of the presentation desire to speak, please take the mic and you'll just have to identify yourself. The public hearing process is the applicant makes a presentation, commission asks questions, staff gives us a report, and then it's open for public comment. That's when you get an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone here to represent Northeast Sign Company this evening? Yes, sir. If you'd identify yourself, please.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. This is Beth Tabriz. I'm the director and designer at Northeast Sign Company.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have technical troubles.
Thank you. Yes, it's working. Yes, appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening again.
Good evening to you, sir. This is the building that's 100 Mechanic Street, General Dynamics, that we're proposing to build a sign for them. So the common permit is the sign to be below 18 square feet. But because the building is big, it's far from the main road, so we're proposing to have a larger sign. The sign we are proposing is acrylic sign. It's not illuminated. It's a half an inch thick, and I have the material here. If you would like to, I can present it. So this is acrylic. This is the material.
You can pass it around then.
The height we are proposing is from 18 inches to 20 inches for each letter. The whole width is going to be anything around 300 inches to 340 inches. The white General Dynamics sign is what we are proposing on the building. The installation will be with the studs, with drill holes on the wall. It's pretty straightforward. It's not something complicated. It's not illuminated, and no wiring or anything. It's just a dimension that is bigger than usual signs. So that's why we had to apply for special use permit.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question?
Yes, absolutely, go ahead, Ryan.
If I may, just to confirm there, that the lettering and the signing, there will not be any backlighting or lighting around it?
No, the acrylic signs are not light up signs, so we are not doing any wiring. So we are not actually, you're not going to do any channel letters. So no, they're not going to be illuminated in the future. So
Okay.
they just want something to be seen. And actually, a lot of landowners contacted us and say that this is going to be great for us as well if you get the permit, so we can have a sign for our buildings as well. So this is a good step for other businesses around it, because they had a sign on the roof, but they had to take it down, so they don't have anything at the moment. The material is that, but that's 1/4 of an inch. It's going to be a little bit thicker than that, 1/2 inch, and about 20 inch tall.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And what is the background size again of the sign? It's mounted on a placard, and how big is the placard?
The whole width of the sign is going to be about 300 inches to about 30 feet. The whole width of the building is 38 feet. So our sign is going to be 30 feet.
And how does that comply with the town's regulations? as
So
to
the
what-
town's, that's why we are doing a special use permit. So the town's permit is under 18 square feet. This is going to be around 30 square feet, what we are proposing with this sign.
Okay.
The square footage is 37.5, and I believe the total square footage, it was up on the screen before, but the total square footage of the, you can't really see it here, of the brick area is about 500 square feet.
Okay.
So it's minimal in contrast, and it's under the allowance for which would be on a single facade for a building, but since it's over the 18 square feet, it requires a
That's what I was
special
looking
use
for.
permit.
Thank you. Any other information for the commission?
If you have any questions for me, I'm installation. We are working on installation. We have, we usually for high buildings, we have 3 way of doing the installation. For this one, I'm trying to get back to. We are probably going to use the boom lift to be able to access the top of the roof, or we are going to directly install it from the roof. We are exploring these 2 options at the moment, but we have done this several times, so it shouldn't be any problems.
Is there a structural engineer that looks at signs this large?
For this kind of sign?
Yes.
This is not, because it doesn't involve any excavating or any foundation work, it doesn't need any engineer work, but we are manufacturing the signs in our factory ourselves in North Haven. I have a video of it, actually, how it's a CNC router. That's how it's been, we cut it. That's a letter G that we are doing on the wood right now. Just wanted to ask for the sample. So we are not fabricating until we have the permit, but that's how it's been built in our factory.
I was more concerned with the actual structure that gets mounted to the facade.
So there is a template. There's always a template. When we are fabricating the sign, we also have a template that goes directly on the wall, and then the sign will go on that template.
And how is that background mounted to the wall,
So-
permanently fixed to the wall?
So it's a paper like a cardboard. It's a cardboard with double-sided tape. It's going to mount it on the wall, and then when the sign is mounted with the studs, the template will be removed. So it's not going to stay on the wall.
They'd have to take out a building permit for this, correct?
Yeah, the comment from the building official is that those drawings will be provided to the building department, and they will
Okay,
approve
fine.
the fastening to the building.
Fine, I guess we'll get into the structure of it when you apply for the building permit.
When we have the permit, then we will go to the fabrication. The structure will be cut with
Okay.
the fabrication. Yeah.
Fine, as long as that's done before it's actually fabricated and mounted.
Sure.
The winds down here are different by code than they are anywhere else in the state, and
Absolutely.
that has to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. We are using the studs and special glues that are construction glues for the studs, so we are not just doing the mountain regular studs. So like the other church sign that you see here, this one, it's exact same thing that we are doing with the construction adhesive that they have, the installers do it, so it is very, very permanent and wind resistant.
And structurally sound.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions for the applicant? Staff have a report?
No, this is pretty straightforward. There's obviously a list of,
Right.
significant list of waivers, but this project really doesn't trigger most of them. So that's why they're asking for so many waivers. And then the only other thing was the building official commenting on the fastening to the structure. And then the zoning enforcement officer, any future illumination would be approved by staff. If the sign was to change and be illuminated at another date, that'd be an update to the special use permit. That would be going through this process anyways. So I didn't see a need to re-stipulate our process already. So that's why there are no recommended stipulations.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions of the staff?
No?
No more questions for the applicant? Then the floor is opened up for public to speak, and we have one person that signed up, Beth. I'm not going to try your last name.
That's
looks
me.
like-
Sorry,
That's
I
you.
just put
Okay.
my name there, yes, that's Tabriz,
Okay.
yes.
So we have no other speakers identified. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this application? No one for or against, or just any general comments? No? Hearing none, what's the commission's pleasure on the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing for this.
Motion is made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The chair votes aye. Any abstentions? Motion passes. What's the commission's pleasure on the northeast sign application?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the waivers that were requested under this application as submitted.
Were there conditions? No conditions, okay. Motion is made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I also make a motion to approve the special use permit as submitted with no stipulations.
Motion is made on the special use permit. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? And there were no conditions on this item, right?
Correct.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Can you read the second public hearing, sir?
Yes. Okay. Notice of public hearing, Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of Stonington. Pursuant to the general statutes of the state of Connecticut, revision of 1958 and all amendments thereto, and pursuant to the zoning regulations for the town of Stonington, Connecticut, the Planning and Zoning Commission hereby gives notice that it will hold a public hearing at the Stonington Board of Education District Office, 40 Field Street, Pawcatuck, on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024 at 7 p.m. on the following application. Public hearing, PZ 2329ZC Maple Lawn Farm, LLC, Paul and Sharyne Cerullo. Zoning map amendment application for an agricultural heritage district, AHD zone. Proposal consists of a master plan to create a campus for food, education, and events. Properties are located at 343 Wheeler Road and another unaddressed parcel on Wheeler Road, Stonington, M/B/L 94-1-4 and 86-1-4. Properties are located in the RR 80 zone and GBR 130 zone.
Okay, so the same protocols are in effect. The applicant presents. We do have some folks signed up that want to speak. After the commission asks questions and the staff gives its reports, those who wish to speak for or against the application or just make general comments can do so. So if you'd state your name, please, sir, for the record.
Yeah, my name's Paul Cerullo. To my left is my daughter Jessica Cerullo. Where'd you go? Sharyne Cerullo. And Bob.
Don't forget your wife.
No, I know that, I know that. And Bob Mercer from Mercer and Birchie, who are preparing the master plan for us and some of the engineering and architectural work. They have in the past done a lot of the architectural and engineering over the last 24 years at the farm, so quite familiar with us. So, thanks for having us again. We're glad to be back. This is third time. What Jessica's going to start with is mostly a refresher course from what we've presented prior to this, with some additions to the video presentation. And we'll be passing around more written information that backs up the presentation. So with your permission, we can start the slideshow, and it only goes on for how many minutes, Jess? I think we'll let them see it all first, and then if they ask questions, we can go back to the, how does
If
that
we
work?
have questions as different slides come up, it may be more convenient to, but we'll sort of play it by ear here.
Okay, however you want to do it.
So you can proceed with your presentation.
Okay.
We may have questions during it.
Right, I'm not sure it's not showing up on the screen, but we plug everything in.
Here we go.
There you go.
Okay, that's an overview of the property. All the structures that are there, have been there for a while. There are no new structures planned in the program going forward. The reason we put this slide up is there seemed to have been some question as to whether or not we were a real farm. State of Connecticut defines a farm as 5 acres. Federal government and the state of Connecticut defines a farm as earning at least $1,000 a year from whatever it is they're doing. Animal husbandry, planting, whatever. So over the years, when we purchased the property 24 years ago, there was a sheep operation there. The Florences owned it for 15 years. I'm not sure how long they had sheep there, but they were there when we purchased it. We turned it into a horse operation for about 10 years. We were then basically forced to change what we were doing because the state of Connecticut stopped the agriculture dollars for the equestrian business unless you were a training facility, which we weren't. We were a boarding facility. We grew hay, we cut hay, we baled hay, and we sold hay to the people that were boarding their horses. You can pass that stuff out. So well, you can see some pictures of the sheep when we purchased the place, they were still there. So we were forced to look at other agriculture opportunities for the farm, knowing that we could no longer declare the equestrian dollars as meeting state requirements. So we converted the hay fields to fodder crops. And the Lewis brothers from the Lewis farm in North Stonington and Dudley Wheeler from his farm in Stonington, over about a 6-year, 7-year period, planted and harvested feed corn on the open acreage. So we did that until we started to think about the AHD. When we were invited to the first AHD meeting in 2017 at the LaGrua Center, and they showed us 3 options for our land. One was to donate it. Second was to sell the development rights to the state. And the third was, what the town came up with, was the AHD, the Agricultural Heritage District, which got our attention. I think there were north of 30 farms, maybe 60 properties in the Stonington area that might qualify for this, that were present at the meeting. So we had to find other ways of raising the dollars necessary to keep our tax exempt status. and our agriculture business going, which we wanted to do. So they also recommended that we use the Connecticut Farm Bureau as a means to look for partners, people who didn't have land, young people mostly, that wanted to be in agriculture, and you could partner with them. So we got some interesting people answering the ad. The first fellow that came along was Craig from Duck Buddies. He raises and sells these unique and endangered waterfowl. Most of them ducks, some geese, i.e. the cotton patch goose. These are birds that either came over on the Mayflower and were put into the colonial farms as basically watchdogs for the other birds. They're pretty valuable birds, but it takes between 3 and 6 years to get these birds, to a production level where it makes sense. It also takes that many years to create colors of ducks that have long since disappeared. So he's been successful at doing this. So it may not look like a whole lot's going on over there with the ducks and the geese, but there's years of work now for his program there. These birds sell anywhere from $30 to $75 each. Sells them as chicks, full grown, mails them all over the country, live. They go up in boxes.
How big an area does that occupy?
He's occupying about an acre of the bottomland, down where the old colonial well was.
Any structures associated with?
Pardon me?
Is there any structures involved?
Yeah, he's occupied the chicken coops that I built when we first moved there and they're insulated buildings, so they're kind of perfect for the propagation of the eggs and whatnot.
Thank you.
He's had to put up some temporary steel buildings to store grains and the like. We've had a problem with the bobcats. So the states worked with me on that. They asked me not to kill them. They asked me to catch them and release them. We did that. 4 bobcats attacked the coops one night and killed $850 worth of ducks. So we had to improve the fencing to accommodate that without killing the bobcats. So we continue to work with the state biologist in charge of bobcats. So when you talk about conservation, that's a pretty important conservation effort there, we think. In addition to that, a young lady by the name of Alexandra came to us. She's a graduate of the University of New Hampshire in agriculture. She teaches in Rhode Island, and she can grow some of the most beautiful flowers and produce and sold them for a couple of seasons at the Westerly Farm Market. She's now had 2 babies in the last 3 years, so she hasn't been back, but she works as a consultant to my wife. And now Sharyne and my children have taken over the row planting and the acreage that we've had to move to so that we could reserve the almost 3 acres of land for where we intend to have the eventing tent and the parking. And we've identified 137 parking places only because that's how much room there is for them. We don't necessarily need that, but we had the space, so that's been identified as parking.
Was there any consideration given to drainage, what's required to manage the stormwater from?
Well, we were just asked by the engineer to address that on December 28th. So we got our letter about what you needed to hear tonight on the 28th of December and 29th of December. So yeah, we're addressing that, but I've been addressing drainage for 24 years. I've done a lot of drainage work on both the north and south side of the farm because the uplands from mostly Stonington Acres, all of that drifts right through and flows through the farm, mostly on the wings of the farm, the north and south side. So we've been able to control a lot of that. Much of it was directed to the pond area when we rehabilitated the pond 20 years ago. That old colonial pond needed a lot of work. The keyways were stone, the dam was earthen where it just wasn't holding up. So we spent a fair amount of agriculture dollars on expanding that pond. And the best test for the value of the water is to make it deep enough to hold trout. And if the trout survive, you know you've got good, clean water coming and going. And I've held trout in there for the better part of 15 years now. So it really is the best reporter of the quality of the water. When we did that, we stopped a lot of the erosion that was going into Wheeler Road. And if you recall, a number of years ago when a storm came prior to the pond being finished, it washed out Wheeler Road. That hasn't happened since then because the water now is controlled through the pond, through the spillway into a lower pond before it hits the big culvert that supports Wheeler Brook. And if you've watched any of the recent work there, I've introduced about 100 ton of stone on that land to the south of the spillway so that when the water hits it, it no longer wants to take out the road. It turns itself right into the culvert. All that stone came from the farm when I was opening up the north field to accommodate future row planting. So yeah, we've done a lot of drainage work, and I know with the request for a drainage study, we can deal with that. The town put 7 culverts under the road the length of our land. So for a few thousand feet, there are 7 culverts that run from the east side of the west side of the road to the east side of the road. And you're shedding all that water through the 24 acres I have on the east side of the road. Most of it puddles because there's no system for it to get back to the brook. It wants to do that, and water will make its way there eventually. We can do some things to improve that, but we can't do it without permission. A lot of what is happening there is it puddles and you get mosquitoes. So we try to eliminate the mosquito problem because of the equine situation, and with enough animal life there. So now we only bought a couple of horses. The dollars help, but I can't use those dollars for agriculture purposes for the state. So we've managed to replace enough dollars to meet the requirements of the state, and we'll continue to do so. But the farm, for the 24 years we've had it, has been in constant agriculture. There's about $150,000 worth of farm equipment that supports that effort. There are 4 tractors, there are harrows and plows, and you name it, cutting equipment. To not be thought of as a farm for the last 24 years is beyond my understanding as to how that is understood. At least the report you sent me said that.
Are you speaking about the Conservation Commission report?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was a surprise.
I don't know if you want to.
My wife wants you to know that we do online courses with the universities of Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Cornell, and basically all the ag schools. They have wonderful programs on pasture management, on what you're using for fertilizer, what you're using for insecticides, whatever you're using to grow your crops and deal with weeds and whatnot. So that's an ongoing thing. They're very good programs. What else can I tell you? Oh, the most recent investment is a $26,000 high-yield well that was positioned in the north field with a 350-foot run right across all the agricultural needs and the perceived needs of the eventing. So we positioned 2 new hydrants, both for fire safety and for all of the HTO requirements that aren't going to put any pressure on the domestic wells that serve the residences. It's a totally separate set of wells. One's 500 feet deep, one's 440 feet deep. So we're not asking for any of the water from the domestic program to be used for either the eventing or the agriculture requirements.
You speaking of fire suppression now?
Fire department's been around 2 or 3 times. Their most recent request of me from the chief was we toured the pond area. And in the past, the fire trucks had been coming in and going the gravel road to the pond. And he asked me if I couldn't improve the barway to the north so that he could position his pumper trucks, because we're the only water available for fire protection in the neighborhood. He wants his pumper truck on the hard road, and he wants to run 80 foot of 4-inch line to a floating hydrant. He asked me not to put my own hydrant in. He'd rather use the floating hydrant because it's more dependable. They know it works all the time. So I need to continue to improve the Colonial Barway out to Wheeler Road with stone and drainage pipe and a culvert pipe, which I've already purchased and told them I would accomplish as soon as we get to a little drier season so I don't bury my track hoe. We all know what the water's been like the last year. You can't put equipment on anything right now. So I'm prepared to do that. I've already made the investment to accomplish it for the chief. So he's happy as a clam, I think. This is an example of the 350-foot of well line that I dug right through granite. You have to get 42 inches down. Where we couldn't get to the 42 inches, we bermed and we built 10 to 12 inches of berm on top of it, which will also serve as a directional for the parking area, which will turn the cars back to their exit point. So it kind of ends up with a multi-purpose trench. You can see on the bottom right there, the flow of the water. This is the most recent rains we've had. In the past, prior to the ponds and going in and prior to my improving all that stonework there, the water used to come over the top of the stone wall. Now we at least have captured and created enough good drainage to where it stays low. So the hydraulic pressure there is now controlled. It won't take out the road again. There's recent planting areas, that's old to the pond construction. The state of the Yukon came and tested our land and recommended that we use drilling plantings to drill down into the soils that had been neglected for a couple of hundred years. So we've been planting these beets that you never eat, but they drill down as much as 6-7 feet over time. So a couple of seasons of planting those beets aerates the soil, and then you can begin to expect better yield from your planting. So that 2-acre, 3-acre parcel there is what's now being prepared for future crop planting, mostly flowers and produce. What Jesse's bringing up is the reclamation of the very historic Wheeler Homestead. That was a 13-year project, dismantling it and putting it back up. Very historic place. Judge Wheeler died in 1904 and Grace died in 1956, an old maid. She deeded the house to a cousin in New Jersey who kept it. Nobody has done much to that property since 24 years ago. Their books are in the Stonington Historic Society. We have a collection of all the books that were written about the farm by either Grace or Judge Wheeler.
I think it's important to say that Judge Wheeler wrote the book of the history of Stonington. So he was the town historian, and Grace Wheeler's book also documents all the graves in the area. So their materials are referenced by anyone doing local research as a main reference.
So that's what the property looked like when we purchased it in '99. We took all the Victorian look out and colonialized it back to its original colonial look anyway, or somewhat original. When we did that, we changed the drainage so that it found the culverts in the road and not just washed across flat parts of the road. That was the old carriage house that was replaced by this barn. That barn included a construction floor for hay storage that required 3x6 double tongue and groove, double select Doug fir for strength, knowing that we were going to have that much hay stored there. We were harvesting so much hay that we had to rent a stainless steel building to to hold hay so it wouldn't get wet. The artifacts are, we stick a shovel in the ground, we find something. Including the War of 1812. The Battle of Stonington, that's a 6-pounder from the War of the Battle of Stonington. They hid their munitions under a particular piece of flooring in the house. So we found their long gun parts and pieces and powder pouches all in that hidden compartment, including the cannonballs. Been a fun project. We talk about the culinary side of things when we want to do this cooking and art. Sharon's an award-winning artist. She won't talk about it. But she's always wanted to do plein air painting programs there. She used to be on the board of the Mystic Art Association. And she ran all of the youth programs at what is now your YMCA in Stonington, the old Stonington Community Center. Says she's the perfect candidate for hosting intimate plein air painting programs. I'm a school-trained chef. I did it my whole life. That was my business. I've really connected with the old style of cooking with the reflector ovens and the 2 beehive ovens that we have. We've done some teaching for friends and family. On the culinary side, you'll see a picture of the kitchen we built. It's a commercial kitchen. It's in 600 square foot. We're not talking about having a school as much as we're talking about having and hosting unique and intimate cooking sessions, hopefully for brides and grooms that'll have their weddings with us. If I'm ever going to get accused of a hobby at the farm, it's the pond. I am a fly fisherman, so we do hobby fish the trout. We've put up a lot of bird housing, so we're bringing all the bluebirds back, the woodcocks, the wood ducks. They all have a place now to go on a regular basis. Every stone you see is a stone harvested at the farm. Jessica designed, along with a direct descendant of the Stanton family, Elizabeth Stanton, this 7-lane labyrinth, which is a walk we put in a piece of land that was really not good for anything but growing mosquitoes. So there's 100 ton of stone involved in that construction, all of which came from the farm except for the crushed stone making the pathways. There's the kitchen. That kitchen was made in Florence, Italy, and shipped in one piece. That was fun putting in. The labyrinth is, Jess, you want to talk about the dedication for the labyrinth? Okay. So these are 2 of the dining rooms that flank the kitchen. One will seat 10 or 12, the other will seat 8. It's our intention just to use them one at a time, except when my 9 siblings come with their wives and husbands and children, which is quite a bit. Another thing that was mentioned was a money grab, which I have to defend. I was honest with this committee the first time we met when you asked me why I wanted to do this, or why we wanted to do it, is so that this place can support itself going forward, long after I'm gone. It's going to need it's going to need dollars. Just the insurance and the taxes alone get you pretty close to about $75,000 a year, those 2 items. Never mind diesel fuel at what it's costing now. 3 times what it used to cost me to run the diesel tractors and loaders. As an example of what happens when 150 people show up for an event on a weekend, for the last 13 years, we've hosted a fundraiser for this organization, TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. If there's any military families here, they'll understand what this is. This is a national organization, and it's designed to help any family that's lost a soldier. In many ways, it's designed to help them. One of the things they have is a scholarship program, and we are approaching $200,000 that we've raised for these scholarships over the last 13 years. And it's done mostly on a fall Saturday, usually September or early October. For 13 years, we've had 150 people come up to the farm, eat, be merry, play bocce on our 3 courts, and at the end of the day, whatever they've donated, we match. The dollars we use to match it, until we run out of them, are the agriculture dollars. Every single dollar that's come in the last 13 years on the farm has gone to these scholarships. You can Google it, and there's an article in there this month about the bocce tournament. We think it's a good thing we're trying to do here. We're going to host weddings. We're not going to have Woodstock events with people, tearing the place up. Weddings, 1 day a weekend, maybe for the wedding season of 12 to 15 events. What else can I say? Any other questions?
With the TAPS event, 150 people, any complaints from the neighbors on traffic or?
I haven't. Not one complaint. I asked the police department the last time we presented to them a few weeks ago if anyone has ever made a phone call about an issue with our singing and playing bocce and eating. Not a one.
Thank you.
You mentioned the improvements that you've made in drainage. You're going to have a plan to manage the stormwater from the parking lot. Have you given any thought to what you're going to do to detain it or put it back into the ground, or how you're going to manage the stormwater from the?
Yeah, right now.
Because that deals with whether or not we can approve the concept, if there's a way to do that. If you're going to have a detention pond, if you're going to have subsurface leaching galleys.
Right now.
The plan should really include
Yeah.
the master plan should include some component as to how you're going to manage the stormwater from such a large impervious area.
Yeah. Well, right now, all the water that comes off the structures goes into a subterranean drainage system that is trained to go to the spillway pond. So it comes and goes to that point. At that point, it leaches its way to the largest of the culverts. So it makes its way under the road at that point. So if you tour the farm this week, you'll see from the last 2 big rainstorms we've had, the water that comes out of the 3-acre parcel that we've set aside for the eventing already is designed to shed to the north side. It follows the gravel and it turns to the lower pond. It's already doing that, but we can have the engineer come look at it and tell me I did a good job or I didn't.
It really should be in the plan. It should
Yep,
be.
we can do that.
There should be a component that, you don't have to design it, but you have to consider it and come up with a concept to manage it.
Get that, Bob?
That should be part of the master plan.
That's his bailiwick.
Is he
I'm
gonna
the
talk?
cook, he's the engineer.
Is he gonna talk to that?
Pardon?
Is he gonna speak to that tonight?
I will, my name's Bob Mercer, with Mercer, Bertie, Vernot, and we're in Old Mystic. I am not an engineer, I'm an architect, and my partner's an engineer, but neither one of us are qualified to do a stormwater drainage design. So we just got this letter from the town requesting it. As Paul said, we've been to, this is our 3rd time here, and this is the first time that the town has gotten a detailed list of what we need to have on our plan. And we just got it last Thursday,
Okay.
2 days before the
I
holiday
understand.
weekend. So this is a work in progress. Fortunately, there's not a time frame here, but they would like to keep this going. I might, and the same is true with the traffic study, which is another item on here. So, but I just want to say a couple of things, how lucky we are to have the Cerullos buy this Wheeler Farm 24 years ago, and they hired us 5 years after that, we did the barn, and we helped him with some of the design in the house. But Paul has put probably 90% of the work done on that house, particularly the house, has been Paul. All the stone moving and the woodworking, and he's hired in a few carpenters to help him along the way. But what a labor of love he's done on that farm. And I don't know if I'm sure he's invited all of you to go up there and walk the property. It is magnificent.
I've seen it. I would assume that he would want to do the same kind of job on the infrastructure improvements to cite the new use.
Absolutely,
And,
yeah.
I'm sorry, you only got the comments a few days ago, but.
Yeah, so we're
Particularly I'm not saying you've got to design it at this particular point in time. What I'm saying is, on a plan like this, you should show a concept, either a detention basin or an area that's set aside for leaching galleys, or something that is going to diminish the peak runoff from that parking lot so that the post-development flow equals the pre-development flow.
Sure, totally understand.
Right.
And I know Rob Valenti is sitting next to him, and he had a stormwater plan done.
Right.
But so this farm, if people are concerned about what it's going to be like, it's not going to be too dissimilar from Firefly Farm or Stone Acres Farm, which are both perfect examples of large farms that can stay as a farm. And that's what the Cerullos are hoping to do once, the next generation takes it over, like you said, to offset the cost of running a farm like this is substantial. And, a few weekends a year can help mitigate and keep the farm in the family.
So you understand what we're looking for then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we got a list here.
Thank you.
So we can follow the list. So anyway,
Appreciate it.
yep.
Does that conclude the presentation?
I have a few things to say about cultural events, just add. So I just want to thank you
Could
for
you just state your name again?
My
please?
name is Jessica Cerullo. I live at 16 Cutler Street in Stonington.
Evening, Jessica.
Good evening. I was looking on our town's website and I read, quote, that Connecticut is losing farmland faster than any other state in the country. Between 1997 and 2002, Connecticut lost more than 12% of its farmland, and the greatest percentage loss occurred in New London County. The AHD increases flexibility for farm-related uses such as educational programs, artisanal enterprises, and markets and low-impact events, in addition to growing farm-to-table produce. I want to talk a little bit about low-impact events because I imagine I will be involved in some of those in the future. And I want to echo what Bob said, which is that my folks don't want Maple Lawn Farm to have the fate of so much Connecticut farmland. They don't want it to be broken up and sold off in bits, but to remain. And when they're gone, and my sisters and I are still here, this will enable that to continue in that way. They also have instilled in us how important it is to gather meaningfully. And having community events that are related to culture is one way that we as communities gather meaningfully. I am a social practice artist. That's my work in the world. That means that I make art in relationship to community. And I often do this in collaboration with farms and individuals who work in the farming industry. Around the country, I've done that. I happen to have moved back here during the pandemic. And here I come home and I find what my parents have been doing since I left in 1993 and actually see these piles of stones. So I want to just tell you a little bit about this labyrinth because it has to do with heritage, which is an important part of this AHD. So during the pandemic, I moved here and I saw all the piles of stones that had been accumulating in the fields as they were being cleared out year after year. Stonington grows a lot of stones. So I began spending time at the Historical Society and familiarizing myself with the history of the farm. I wondered what, besides building walls, could be done with these piles of stones at the farm. And through research and some serendipity, I connected with Liz Stanton, a woman from New York, who has built labyrinths and mazes on farms across the country and who is a descendant of Thomas Stanton. Thomas Stanton, who once owned that land and sold the property to Isaac Wheeler in 1687. Liz came to Maple Lawn Farm and the town of Stonington to explore her heritage, to connect with the land, and to work with me and my parents and many neighbors in Stonington to design and build the labyrinth. We did this in conjunction with numerous visits to the Stonington Historical Society, where we learned about the many stewards of the land over the centuries, and we dedicated our years of work building that labyrinth to all those who carried stones, by choice, by indenture, and by enslavement. With the Historical Society, we were able to find out the names of many people who did that, and to do that work in their honor. Since the labyrinth was built 2 years ago, we have gathered in small groups to share and create poetry and song and to make land-based art, inspired by the landscape, inspired by heritage and activities on this farm. And it's my hope that we will have an opportunity through the AHD to continue these educational efforts, which celebrate our region's unique riches and history. This is a micro view, but we can take a moment also to have a macro view. And I say this as much for my neighbors, our neighbors, who might be worried in some way about gatherings, which is just to say that in the macro view, we're living in a country right now where the Surgeon General has put out a warning, a health crisis of loneliness and isolation. We need places to gather. We need places to unplug from our devices, to put our hands in the earth, to feel our feet on the ground. So I appeal to all of us here in this room and invite you to help us in being hospitable, so that people can gather and marry, that people can gather and walk, people can gather and make food together, make art together, and to build community and placemaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude the presentation? Does the commission have any questions of the applicant? Does the commission generally agree that the master plan should include the requested elements of a traffic study and a stormwater management plan?
Agreed, yes.
Any staff input, Clifton?
Just a few minor things. With a zone change application or zoning map amendment, obviously this is a part of a multi-step process. Next step would be the site plan, which is where you jump into all those more specific details. The town engineer's comments specifically state regarding the stormwater drainage, all of that information be submitted with the site plan application. The applicant did provide a generalized narrative of everything regarding the use of the site. They provided some preliminary traffic numbers in that narrative in the original application set. Nothing related to a traffic study, but they did have some preliminary narrative about impact on the roads. This obviously was reviewed by the police commission. The police commission had no concerns with any of the uses on the property. The only concern that was, again, highlighted by the town engineer was just reaffirming sight lines. That would be done at the site plan stage anyways. A lot of what the commission is going to have to make a decision on tonight is related to determination of intent. What is the intent of the use of the property? Does that meet the AHD as defined in the regulations? The regulations provide under 10.5.3 the considerations of approval for which the commission has to make a determination by. So the rules are for approving a zone change are very straightforward. A lot of it is related to just making determinations on language and intent of the AHD zone. So I anticipate with a lot of the concerns that have been either approached by the applicant already or might be approached later, they're going to be about intent of the use and whether or not that's truly agricultural. So I would just leave the commission with that. Remember the regulations, remember the considerations for approval as it's defined. And then in my report, I highlighted a few of the policies in the POCD that talk about agricultural uses, scenic roadways, scenic agricultural sites in town, and the necessity to preserve them. So I would just use all of those in conjunction when, making a decision on this one.
Thank you. What's the timing on this application?
The timing on this one, the public hearing can continue to February 6th, which is 2 meetings from now, before it has to be required for an extension. So it can be extended. Decision.
Would the applicant have to agree to an extension or can we?
The applicant would have to request an extension for the public hearing to go beyond February 6th.
Okay.
But there are 2 more meetings. One is on January 16th, and the other is on February 6th.
I think we can conclude before then. And I understand your point about, details with respect to stormwater management can become very focused when you really understand the exact nature and grading of a parking lot. But approving a change in use like this and adding such a large parking lot without some consideration, without some concept, whether it's pond, whether it's leaching galleys, I think would be an oversight on our part.
Yeah,
So I'm not looking for a detail as much as I'm looking for a conceptual stormwater management plan. I'm not looking so much for assessment of level of service at intersections surrounding this as much as I'm looking at traffic generation and impact on Wheeler Road.
Yep, and the town engineer makes that comment because the application states no hard surfaces are used, but obviously if you have 137 cars driving in and out plus agricultural vehicles, you're going to have some compaction that's going to create some stormwater-related issues.
Well, it's going to be a disaster.
That needs to
some sort of a permanent surface.
Absolutely. So between that and then the town engineer, our contracted engineer, CLA engineers also reviewed the plan in addition to our town engineer itself. They highlighted a few items that are required as part of the master plan that are missing. Some of them are described in narrative, but not, for example, traffic. A traffic plan is not formally included, it's described in narrative. Use of site is described in narrative. So a lot of the items that are listed as missing.
I'll leave it up to you to figure out what in that list we really should have. I saw the CLA list also.
Yeah, so I think with part of either making a determination tonight or continuing, highlighting and pointing out which one of those need to be addressed in greater detail would be the commission's pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Does the commission have any questions of Clifton? Thank you, Clifton. Okay, if there are no other questions of Clifton or of the applicant or his expert or their expert, we'll open it up to the speakers who have signed up. The first speaker is Bill Lyman. Bill, are you present? Evening, sir. Just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Bill Lyman. I live at 579 Togmonk Road. The area we generally refer to as the Uplands, part of town where next to Wheeler Road where the Cerullos live, Al Harvey and that whole area. So I signed up to make a few general comments based on some concerns that I've heard from some of my neighbors over the past year, since this was actually first proposed quite some time ago. And as you know, this whole area is primarily zoned residential now, GBR 130 and 88, 80, RA 80, and of course one of the activities that's not purely residential is farming. And most of the people that move and live in that area expect farming activities. They know that when they move in. It's what's been going on there for a long time. And certainly, the kind of things that Paul just presented that he's done in terms of preserving the farming activity and the buildings and that are, wonderful. And I think most neighbors, totally support that. The kind of thing that raises concerns is big events. and big events that people may not be clear what the boundaries are for those events. I looked, with that in mind, I read, their application in detail, and I certainly saw a lot of specific proposed uses, which they presented tonight, culinary classes, farm-to-table dinners, all those kinds of things. I wouldn't imagine that any of the immediate neighbors would find objectionable. The concern probably is over the things that can get very large, weddings and fundraisers. Their plan has two areas that concerned me from a size point of view. One of them was that the parking, which you've had some discussion about, I think the plan shows an area designated for 140 spaces. And the plan also talks about the largest number I see in the plan is 200, which I think 140 spaces is probably consistent with enough support for an event of 200 people. I can see, as Paul indicated, how you can have an event of 150 to 200 people come and go, and although there's maybe a logical concern about traffic, I think perhaps a bigger concern is what is the potential noise that can be generated from an activity that involves amplified music. I live within, not too close to Stonington Vineyards, many of my neighbors much closer, and, they're a very good neighbor. But we do have amplified music down there periodically, and depending on how the wind's blowing, it can travel some distances, even though there are natural buffers. So the frequency of events with amplified music and the timing in the day are all things that I think would be of concern in terms of approving the next stage. If you approve this master plan, what kind of boundaries might there be on that? It's my understanding from reading the regs that certainly the intent of this initial master plan is to put some boundaries and some dimensions and some bulk requirements to the regulations that would be associated with this new special zone. I was very happy, by the way, to hear, some of you may know this, some in the audience may not, maybe you don't know. I touched base with our zoning enforcement officer just to see, has there, with the two other districts that we've had, two other ADHs that we've had in town, have there ever been any complaints that would require, the zoning officer to take any action? And to her knowledge, there have not been any, which I was happy to hear. But she said, if there was a complaint, the only way I can enforce something is if I have a number, I have a dimension, I have a requirement that I can enforce. So with that in mind, I had two areas in the existing application that concerned me. One of them was that under parking, I'm good with the 140 spaces, because I think that more than enough to support a 200-person event, which I think is a logical size. But it also says additional overflow parking is available in a 2.5-acre field. Well, I know that you can park a lot of cars in a 2.5-acre field. So, that to me seems kind of an open-ended thing that you might want to consider in terms of when you evaluate this is should there be a boundary on that parking? Should there be a bounding on the number of cars that could come and go because of that? Because that'll also really set a logical boundary on the amount of people that can be there. The other thing is that I thought was a little loose was fundraiser events up to 200 people. Well, fundraiser events is a pretty vague thing. It can be the kind of thing Paul described, which can go on and neighbors wouldn't even be aware of it. But Paul himself said, we don't plan to do a Woodstock type thing. But, what if 5-10 years down the stream, somebody, down the line, somebody thinks that, well, hey, this would be a good spot to have a 2-day music festival, all day long and stuff like that. Would it be allowed or would it not be allowed if it's done as a fundraiser? So that concerns me a little bit that, I think the things that are in this master plan ought to be as specific as possible so that everybody knows what's allowed, what's not allowed in the big picture, realizing that the details will come later. Sometimes some of the details, once the second stage of the process involves specific site plans and details associated with that constraints and any stipulations can be put there. But since this is the first stage and this is sort of setting the boundaries, I just think it's important that we set those boundaries and consider, that the two areas, too many cars type of event which would generate two noises. If there's some way that, that kind of thing can be addressed, I think it would be a good thing.
The comments are very thoughtful and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Next person on the list is Stuart Cole. Evening, sir.
Thank you. As chairman of the Conservation Commission, we submitted comments which are in the record. I want to say off the top that I am impressed with your presentation and of the work that's been done agriculturally there. But here's my cautionary part of it. None of that has anything to do with the AHD. Okay, the AHD is a zone that was specifically designed originally by the Simmons family to allow commercial operations, in their case, a full-time restaurant, on a farm. All the activities that the applicant shown can be done anyway. You can do in-home businesses, you can do in-home classes, you can do all the farm operations, you can do cooking classes, you can retail products on a roadside stand. We allow that with farms. All that is possible. The AHD is, what we noted in our comments was the AHD does not necessarily have a connection with farmland preservation. It requires a small amount of land to comply with within a greater piece of land. And there is no restriction on the landowner applying to go back to the previous zoning regulations if he so wanted to. Of greater concern is the loose, flexible nature of the original AHD wording. To wit, 5 houses can be built within the AHD, although no additional units are proposed by these applicants. In fact, with the AHD on this property, you can have the dwellings within the envelope of the AHD and then subdivide the rest of the property. There's really no farmland preservation. I was in real estate for 35 years. I know people have great concepts and love for the land, and then something happens to them. The AHD will go with this land in the future. It'll make it much more saleable. I'm sure all the previous applicants thought of that. And we have, because of the loose nature of the AHD, you really don't have you have little control over future uses of this land. Somebody could say, okay, I'm going to have weddings there. Well, okay, weddings, nice. How about memorial services? Okay, fundraisers, yeah. It comes down to our zoning enforcement officer trying to figure out, okay, what's an event that's, like, what kind of event is, you can have a beer tasting event, you can have wine tasting event, you can have, these can be an event factory. And I don't, what I noted here was there are no maximums on attendance to events. There are no restrictions on the number or frequency of events. 100-plus car parking lots are allowed without any requirements of a normal commercial establishment, i.e. drainage, oil, water, separators, etc. I know you're asking for that now, but in the AHD, there's just parking allowed. In fact, there's not even any setbacks for the 5 houses on the AHD envelope. It's one of the loosest regulations we have in the town. There are many properties in the town which could be used for this. And regardless of their good intentions on farming and all the work that they have done, the requirements for past farming are very, very lax. $1,000 a year? Come on, the state's requirements for their farmland preservation require a percentage of income from farming going to the owners, that the next generation will take over the farm, and things like that. You can't just say, well, I'm selling some vegetables and I'm selling, some hay. That doesn't, I know that's what a lot of people do now, but that wouldn't cut it as far as the farm helping you with farmland preservation. I think I'll wrap my comments right there. I think I've made my point. The AHD needs a lot more work as far as being specific as what's being done. I see it as a potential problem going forward. You come in to the rural area and you say, and you overlay this zone on, and what's to stop people from taking advantage of it? These people have worked it as a farm as best they could. Other people, sell some hay, sell some chicken eggs. Hey, we're a farm. That's what I'm worried about. You're going to see, these properties could be sold, and a commercial enterprise could buy this property in the future. We don't have any control over that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Next speaker who has signed up is Stanton Sim. Evening, sir.
Yes, my name is Stanton Sim. I live at 20 Summers Lane right near the, I'm also the executive director for the Stonington Land Trust. We've preserved three farms in total, in perpetuity, and in the entire farm, totaling 400 acres in Stonington thus far. The issue here, I mean, all this sounds very good. I mean, they've done a lot of work on it. But most of the things they talked about, Stuart Cole was saying, you can do anyway. You don't need the AHD zone. The AHD zone does not require any preservation. It doesn't require any farming after it's overlaid. In fact, it says in the last paragraph, it says preservation of agricultural lands. The Commission recognizes that ensuring the economic viability and sustainability of agricultural land requires substantial flexibility in the use and restrictions placed upon such properties. That's never been an issue in Stonington. No one has, the Commission has never considered that. While the Commission encourages the preservation of agricultural lands in perpetuity via fee simple conveyance, deed restriction, conservation easement, and other similar means, the kind of things that land trusts and the Connecticut farmland preservation groups do. The Commission shall not require the dedication of any agricultural land as a requirement or an exaction related to any master plan approval. So you shall not, this means, of course, that you cannot require any preservation, which can be done by the applicant anyway, but the AHD doesn't require that. It also doesn't require that any particular percentage of the property be used for agriculture. It says it right in the regulation. Once the zone is changed, and I think Stuart covered that, it's changed. They've done a very good job, and I don't suspect that they're going to take advantage of it necessarily at this point. But a future owner can use parts of this AHD that most residents wouldn't. It doesn't require that you live on the property. It doesn't require that it be an individual or individual family that owns the property. A corporation could own it down the line and could use all of the various things that the regulations that this zone allows. What it comes down to, you have an area of hundreds of acres around it, which is very low density, very individual homes, 2-acre and 3-acre lots. But what you do with the AHD is you come down from overhead and drop in a 35-acre commercial zone right in the middle. There are things you can't do. It tells you what you can't do. It tells you a lot of things you can do, but you can't have gasoline filling stations. You can't have motor vehicle, trailer coach, and boat sales, leasing or renting. You can't have auto repair, maintenance, or paint shops. You can't have car washes. You can't have water parks, theme parks, and amusement parks, which is glad you can't do that. And you cannot have retail sales not accessory to a principal use. They don't tell you what principal uses are. in this zone. I'm not saying in the application, but in the zone. The prohibited uses are really extreme. It was the way it was written, it was the way it was adopted. You have a whole series of things that you can do. Wineries, microbreweries. But the big one is event facilities. It's event facilities hosting weddings, farm dinners, corporate gatherings, performances. I asked the town planner, what is a performance in this case? He said, well, music. So in other words, I said, in other words, you could have concerts, outdoor concerts. And you can. It says, and other public and private special events. The Cerullos, as they said, have already hosted a nonprofit dinner every year. That obviously has been compatible with their current zone. It didn't require an NHD to do that, or AHD. The AHD doesn't really take into consideration what the surrounding people might be concerned about. And I think you would probably find that most people are concerned about noise, about cars. I mean, as Bill Lyman said, what they're looking at, even on the application, is an awful lot of cars, and if it ended up being owned by someone else down the line, that can be changed. You put a master plan in now, and that tells you what you can do now. But it tells you right in the zone that you can change the master plan. You can come back and reapply. And that reapplying could be substantially more than they're doing right now. If you look at the dry land on this is 15.5 acres on the west side of the road, around the house. They've done a really nice job on that. It is historic. But the 140-car parking lot has to take up at least 2 acres, probably more. The application indicates there's an additional 2.5 acres to park on, and there's also a paved area for trucks from caterers, music, and what have you. The point is, pretty much everything they talked about, you can do without changing the zone. But once you change the zone, it's changed forever. Unless the owner of the property wants to eliminate it. The town cannot eliminate it. So it's there forever, whether it's now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 20 or 50 years from now. But whatever a future owner wants to do with it, and is listed in the AHD, they can do. I'm sure that's what most people are concerned about, the fact of the impact. When people bought their houses in that area, we've lived there for this will be 43 years. We built our own house. We built it post and beam out of 160-year-old timbers. We consider it to be somewhat historic. There was absolutely no way that you could have been faced with having weddings, concerts, etc., right nearby. The AHD changed all that. The AHD actually, I think Paul Cerullo mentioned there were quite a number of houses in town, quite a number of properties in town that this would cover. I can think of about 25 offhand myself. This zone will, if it's approved, will change the area around that technically could change it forever. Now, the Cerullos may not want to do much with it. But if they don't want to do much with it, then do you really need it? But the future owner could use it to the maximum, as I think Stuart mentioned. It also implies, one of the things that really bothers me, there's been an implication from people in town saying, this is the way you preserve a farm. Well, Stonington Land Trust owns outright the Pfizer farm, 82 acres on Togwonk Road. We purchased that about 12 years ago. It now has the best bobbling field in the area. We've done programs for endangered New England cottontails, what have you. That was in 2012. In 2008, the owners of the 159-acre Noise Farm on Pequot Trail bought the property and gave an easement on 148 of the 159 acres to Stonington Land Trust. That land is permanently preserved. You can't do anything. You can farm it. It still has farming on it. They now have vegetables out front. But it cannot be developed, and you could not do things like 140-car parking lots. Next to it is the Allaire Farm, which we weren't involved in, but it's a 108-acre horse farm, and they put a 98-acre easement on that to the Connecticut Farmland Trust. Across the way from that is a 44-acre property, belonged to Mr. McGuire. If you on Pequot Trail and going up North Anguilla Road, there's a big field there, which is over the only untapped aquifer in town. The owner wanted it preserved. He didn't act to do it. He didn't have kids. He left it to his nieces and nephews. But they decided on their own to fulfill his wishes, and they placed an easement on the whole thing to the Connecticut Farmland Trust.
Could I ask you to wrap it up, Mr. Stanton?
What's that?
There's-
And the ultimate one for us, someone earlier mentioned Thomas Stanton. Thomas Stanton was the second European American who came to Stonington. He came here in 1649 and acquired the Stanton farm in 1653. It became the Davis farm in 1673, but the Stantons were brought back when the grandson married Sarah Stanton, and it's back now. The Davises are both Stantons and Davises. They gave up 3/4 of the value of that property when we preserved it. The total property is 420 acres, and 410 acres of that is preserved. They can farm it, they can do a lot of other things on it, but it didn't require an AHD zone to do that. So there are other ways, and I think maybe better ways of preserving it, and I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak this evening? Yes, ma'am. I think someone behind you actually raised. If you just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joyce Fingerut. I live at 537 Togwonk Road.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you.
A lot of the discussion this evening has been theoretical. What would happen, what could happen. I live next door to Stonington Vineyard. I can tell you exactly what has happened. One of the issues is the sound, the noise of an outdoor event. There has been no real enforcement of what is the decibel level. There were many promises from the late owners of sound barriers, checking the decibel level. None of that ever happened. The occasional call when it just became impossible, with all the windows and doors closed, resulted in my call going to an answering machine. There was no one on the site to take care of it. They overstayed the time limits, and that took more phone calls till that they finally turned off. So what I am saying is that, first of all, you should consider that the music needs to be inside the tent rather than outside. You should consider decibel levels. You should consider sound barriers, either natural or temporary placement of sound barriers. And you should consider enforcement and having somebody always on site to take care of any problems that might arise. And this should all be required, and specifically in any plans that they have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very thoughtful comments, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else that wishes to speak this evening? Yes. Good evening, Don.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and commissioners. Yeah, just to piggyback on the Ben Tamsky, 5 Edgemont Street, Mystic, Connecticut. Speaking as a citizen tonight, I just wanted to elaborate, well, not really elaborate, just reinforce what the previous speaker said. Guidelines for amplified music are really key. It's got to be enforceable. We've had problems in downtown Mystic, the Inn at Mystic, which there wasn't supposed to be any amplified music there, and there was, and it took about 2 years to actually get it stopped, even though it was not permitted. It was the zoning enforcement officer responded promptly and consistently, but it's a long process to enforce violations of
Agreed.
sound levels, hours, number of events, number of people, etc. So get it right before you approve the master plan.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else wish to speak? No? Evening?
Hi, I'm Sharyne Cerullo. I'm Paul and Sharon's daughter. I live at 267 Togwonk Road, so just one road up, pretty much a straight hour shot to my parents' house. So I know there was, some questions regarding what happens after my parents aren't here any longer, and my other sister spoke, so I'm the other part of that. I've lived on Togwonk. I think we've had the house since '96, but I think I've been there since the early 2000s, so I'm very much in the neighborhood. I think my parents have been very good neighbors for the last 25 years. I think they've taught us to be good neighbors. We want to be able to hold events. That's definitely a part of it. It's how we're going to pay to keep up the place, keep it looking nice, keep it as a beautiful place for you to see on your drive to your homes. I think that we're committed to making sure the right kinds of events are being held there and the right types of people are going to be there. And we're very conscious of that. We're very protective of the farm and the place my parents have built. And we don't want any problems or difficult people. We want to respect our neighbors. We want to be able to do the types of things we want to do with the farm. And this agricultural heritage district allows us to do that and to generate income, to keep it a beautiful place for our future generations. So we'll be respectful of our neighbors, and that's all I can say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think there was one other person over on this side. Yes, ma'am. You would state your name and address, please? Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Apologize, I've never spoken at a meeting like this before, so I'm a little bit nervous. So my name is Carrie Moore. I live at 186 Dolly Drive in the Stonington Acres neighborhood, which abuts the Cerullo's land. And first, I would like to say that it is clear to me, Mr. and Mrs. Cerullo, that you have very lovingly and meticulously restored your property. That's really clear. And also, is it Janice, your other daughter? Jessica, okay. Jessica, what you said about being very intentional about gatherings and drawing people together to build a sense of community, that definitely resonates with me. And it's clear that the Cerullos have the very best intentions. And I do think that it is their intent to be good neighbors. And I'm not qualified to speak to engineering or health concerns. I'm here as a mom and as a neighbor. And the things that I'm concerned about are noise, traffic, drunk drivers. We have 2 brand-new teenage drivers on the road. And also the idea that we may be setting a precedent in Stonington for spot zoning, which I think carries its own set of slippery slope, if you will. And we've talked a lot about intent. And I spent my early career as a fundraiser, so I am and an event planner. So I am, I think, qualified to speak on events in general and fundraising events in particular. And I think that although you can have every intention of controlling the types of people you have at your venue, that is a very abstract concept and very difficult to enforce. And although the intent may be there, I don't know that any of the Cerullos are going to be there at 10:30 at night to control people that they have no control over, right? And those people may be drinking and driving. Somers Lane needs to be repaved as it is, and having 140 or 150 cars coming and going through our neighborhood concerns me. We bought our house because it is nestled into preservation land. It's a very quiet neighborhood, a wonderful neighborhood, and we do actually hear the noise from the parties. We haven't lived here very long, so we actually didn't know where it was coming from. We assumed it was from Stonington Vineyards, but we were told later that it is actually coming from the Cerullos. So, when we're sitting in our screened-in porch in the evening, we can definitely hear it. Again, I think that we talked about future use, and it sounds like the Cerullos are motivated by very altruistic purposes, but when the rubber meets the road, you have to pay the bills. And I just don't want our neighborhood to deal with the reality of this not turning into what they hoped it would. And that's all I have. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does the applicant, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is John Pereira. I live right next to the Moores at 182 Dolly Drive. We've lived there my entire life, so since 1998, 99. I'll keep this very brief. I wasn't actually intending on speaking. So although we're very large fans of farms and the small events and things, our personal concern is of large events. Although I'm sure this was not intended, there have been noise complaints filed, and there was one occasion about 10 years ago, but I don't know the exact date, where the police were called. Our land does directly abut the farm in almost directly in line with some of the buildings. So if you walk to the back of our land, you can see through the woods directly into that, I guess, farmhouse area. I don't know what you'd like to call that. But there was an instance where the police were called. We were told by police it was either a shotgun or a cannon fired more than once. This was late at night. This was between probably like 7 and 9 o'clock. I don't remember the exact time. At the time, we had horses on our property. It was very distressing for them. They were trained therapy animals, so that was a very large issue for us. We have people that have medical concerns in terms of noise pollution, which is why we live in the woods. And it's not the only time we've heard parties and things through the woods. As you know, they end fairly quickly, and we have not filed any noise complaints with the police, but except for that one time that they were called, and they did use our property for access back, and the only property that ours abuts is the farm. So that is, the large events and noise pollution is our main concern. So, thank you.
Understood. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Evening.
Good evening. My name is Vicki McCord. I live at 400 Wheeler Road, basically across the street from the Cerullos. I've lived there for almost 30 years. When Paul and Sharyne moved into town, we became friends. We're basically directly across the road from them. I have never heard any loud noises or parties at their house. I can see their house from my house. I see when their lights go out. I don't know whose notices or who is saying all these large parties, but I don't find any truth in that. I'm happy for them. I accept their plan. They have a very tasteful property. They keep up with it. They're not bad neighbors, but I can't stand here and listen to somebody say that there has been loud music at their house when there isn't. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yes. You can bring him up if you want.
Hi.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anna Henkin. I live at 30 Dolly Drive, and my property directly abuts their property as well. Sorry, very nervous. I just wrote something which I thought would be a little bit easier for me to read. So we directly abut. We actually have 5 children. This is Oren, he's our youngest. Our oldest is 7. So that's a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 7-year-old.
You've got your hands full.
I do, but I love it. They go to bed at about 7:30 every night. So this is extremely late for Oren, but he's doing very, very well. I know we have not heard a lot of noise. Our properties are separated by a stone wall. We have not heard, as of yet, sound, but again, we are worried about the future of hearing sound and having to keep our windows closed year-round to insulate the kids and give them a quiet night. We've lived in Stonington for 4 years. My husband is in the military. He's been serving for about 18 years. So we moved into the neighborhood because it's very quiet, very peaceful. We probably have one of the longest driveways in the neighborhood. It affords us a great deal of privacy. We're able to raise the kids surrounded by nature, the woods. It's just idealistic. We can see their lights at night, which is fine for right now. We can hear the highway from our house. We can also hear cows on Al Harvey. So I'm assuming in the future, we will be able to hear sound, music, parties, when the only barrier is a stone wall. We would like to have more clarity if this does go forward, if this does become a weekday hosting or weekends. Again, the specifications on the regularity of it. A lot of people have spoken to that already. And again, that might be it. We do have a couple neighbors I know that haven't or weren't able to come because of not feeling well, but I know there are many neighbors in our community that are feeling the same way, concerns for noise. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and please thank your husband for his service. Anyone else? Would the applicant like rebuttal time? Sure.
So we heard two basic things here. One, there was a lot of argument about the AHD, okay? That's not my fight. We responded to the AHD's request for a zone change based on the meeting I went to that was hosted by the town's people.
They created the
All
zone.
we did was say, that sounds like a good idea. It's the third option for keeping land open. The first option is to donate it to Mr. Sims. The second option is to sell your development rights to the city. Take the money and run. Those were the two options until the town created the AHD. I thought it was a pretty good idea to give folks like us an option. So we signed up. We followed all the rules that were in the document that was given us, and here we are. A couple of years later, 3 or 4 meetings later, presentations included, lawyers, architects, engineers. All we're doing is following. I like rules. I was one of 10 kids. We had really strict rules in a general for a mother. And it worked because we followed the rules. I fully intend on following the rules. Now, if the rules need decibel levels lower than what they currently are, then we will follow those rules. The type of lighting that needs to be installed, the police department wants certain lighting, the fire department wants lighting. One needs it for traffic, one needs it for safety. There's concerns that light will change the environment. Well, it's a necessary evil, but you can buy lighting that is so directed to your areas that it may not be as harmful. But whatever the rules are in lumen power, we would follow them.
One of the things I wanted to say is about something that wasn't mentioned at all, and that is the farm used to be 600 plus acres. And over the course of history, they had to sell it off in order to survive. That's how you got Stonington acres. The previous owner developed it. They also set aside 96 acres surrounding the property to buffer Stonington acres from the farm. We have an additional 15 acres included in, added to that 96 that buffer the Stonington acres. We didn't fire off any cannons either, just so you know.
We don't know who made that shot. We're here 5 months of the year.
Yeah, I never, of course.
Well, there's that 91 acres between your property and our property, that horseshoe of land. that
Mr. Cerullo.
People hunt.
Please, don't engage in dialogue with people in the audience. This is, you have a chance to rebut things that were brought up directly. Please rebut those things.
Okay.
Don't engage in conversation.
We've never done this before.
And I would ask
Whatever the rules
the
are.
audience, please, it's impossible for us to conduct this meeting if you turn this into a conversation between yourselves. We just can't conduct the meeting that way. So,
I mean, that was something that wasn't mentioned tonight, although it's mentioned in the proposal. Also in the proposal, there are stipulations as far as how many people I mean, we did put overflow parking in, not because we expect to have overflow parking. We thought it was an addition that would be more acceptable to the proposal, not because we expect that we need more than what we've already given them.
Well, all we can say to it is, whatever the rules are, we intend on following. We're here for half the year. The events will be held during the time of year we're here. We stay pretty close to it. We work the farm ourselves. We're the 2 employees, plus the partners, the young people that we allowed to do we allow them to farm some of the acreage, like the Duck Buddies guys. We record their sales. They keep that money, keep their stuff going. We record the sales so that the state knows that we're still entitled to our tax. All that does is give me the ability to buy tractors and not pay tax on them. That's all that does. So, again, I understand your concerns, Bill. Your arguments.
Please, Mr. Cerullo.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Can't engage in a conversation. It just.
Well, a lot was said.
We're talking about the rules of the meeting, so why don't you address the board so that that'll stop you from getting involved in conversations with people in the audience,
All right,
okay?
come back
You
to
can't do that.
So,
Why don't you wrap up your rebuttal?
Let's see if there's anything else. Okay.
we're done.
It's also difficult for us to record this if you're standing away from the mic.
Right.
Thank you.
One of the other things is, and we put this in the proposal, the location of the tent for the event is behind the house, and the barn. So people on the street side can't even see that, in case they're concerned about that. Parking is all behind the house.
That's it, it's all about noise.
Yeah, and I understand the noise concern, but hopefully 96 acres is enough to buffer. I can't imagine you need more than that.
Well, you can expect stipulations on anything that has an amplified sound system.
Correct.
That's part of the reason that another gentleman talked about there was no complaints on other similar outdoor venues in town. That's because this board established rules on amplified
Exactly.
music, on hours of operation, on the size of the venue, and you can expect similar if the board, is so inclined to entertain this. You can expect similar restrictions on this. And that's why those other
Completely
events operate without complaints,
Yeah.
because all of these things are taken into consideration. That's why we hold meetings like this, so we can identify concerns, and so we can be responsive to them, and still be reasonable to what you want to do.
Exactly.
So we-
if
we
you could
won't- we
wrap
only
up
host
your-
one party
wrap
a
up your
year.
rebuttal, if you would, please.
Pardon?
If you could wrap up your
Right.
rebuttal.
Yeah, just one other fact is we host one event a year, and that's in the fall for the scholarship. We hear also music playing and parties, especially around college
We
graduation and high
have
school
fireworks
graduation time.
from
We hear all
other
that.
community.
That's not us.
That's not us.
That's somebody else partying. So that noise travels throughout the region, especially when there's no leaves on the trees. So, that's it, we're done. We're done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you for the comments of the audience.
Does anyone who spoke against or made general comments wish additional rebuttal time? Well, we'll look forward to receiving your additional feedback. No one else desires to speak? Hearing none, what's the board's pleasure on this matter? Oh, I'm sorry, Clifton.
I don't really have a rebuttal, just clarification. The question came up whether or not a floating zone is an institute of spot zoning. Floating zones are pre-approved zones within the town, so it overlays over the entire town, and then you select over time. So there's legal precedent for floating zones to exist and not constitute spot zoning. The second comment, just regarding all of the complaints or issues that come in, Mr. Tamsky is absolutely correct. Our zoning enforcement officer responds promptly to any call that comes in, any complaint that comes in, measuring whether or not something is violating a noise ordinance. Noise ordinances aren't regulated by the zoning office. They're regulated by the police department. So that would be a separate issue on measuring using actual decibel numbers. So that's not a zoning tool, so you couldn't stipulate something based on decibels in a zoning approval. But if there is
But
some.
we could stipulate that there is no outdoor amplified music.
Correct. So
We
you
could
can't,
stipulate that.
you could stipulate that the amplified music has to remain indoors at all times. It has to end by a certain period of time.
That's what we did in
Correct.
another instance.
Yep. So just clarifying that the decibel limit is not something that this commission has the capacity to enforce, but they could stipulate the location of any amplified music, any music in general, and then the hours of operation in which that would be. So the commission can stipulate something like that. Everything else is a police-related issue, just clarification.
Thank you, Clifton. Anyone have any questions for Clifton? Okay, and we do have time to extend this application, correct?
Correct. The next meeting is January 16th, and then the one following after that is February 6th, and this public hearing needs to be closed by that date.
What would the applicant desire in terms of coming back? Would February 6th give you more time to respond? I mean, we wouldn't want to get the stuff on February 6th. You'd have to get it to the staff before then. But maybe we look at the February 6th meeting, and you can get the information back to us, the traffic information and drainage information as soon as you can.
Yeah, what I'm tracking is one, more detailed information on stormwater management and that plan. Another I'm tracking is clarification on the parking and the overflow. What does overflow mean? How much does that mean? Quantifying that as much as possible.
I think the occupancy of the tent would be,
Yep.
the size and occupancy of the tent would be another issue that we'd like to know.
I also got a little more clarification on the schedule of events. I know there's the narrative provided.
Hours of operation.
Hours of operation, scheduling of events, things like that, months of the year, whatever that is. So I guess more of a conceptual event plan outline, just to specify in greater depth, at least that's what I got.
Yeah.
And then all of the, ingrained fine details would be at the site plan stage, but, a little more depth on those other design elements at the moment. Okay.
Okay, what's the commission's pleasure on the application?
With that, I think I would make a motion to adjourn the public hearing till the February 6th meeting.
Table.
Or table the public hearing, pardon.
There's a motion to table till February 6th. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone have any discussion on it, by the way? No? Okay. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting is adjourned.